Find the meat cart. This is the story of Junji, whose room is adjacent to the garden of the neighboring house, which is quite overgrown and lacks sunlight. At that moment, Junji is reading a book when he hears someone walking into that house. The person seems to be a doctor, but when the doctor opens the door to enter the house, Junji hears Rina scream. Rina is the daughter of the neighbors who has been ill since birth and has never left the house. From what he hears, she is afraid of insects and is covered in them, even though her mother cannot see them. Therefore, she might be experiencing hallucinations of insects. After the mysterious doctor leaves, she seems to calm down, staring blankly out the window at the grass in front of her house. At that moment, Junji sees her, and when she realizes he is watching, she smiles at him and points to the grass. However, as she extends her arm, he can see the holes appearing on her skin, which has been a lingering concern for him since childhood, regarding the world she inhabits. The scene flashes back to Yuji's childhood, when his grandfather was suffering from a strange illness, constantly crying out that he was cold, without telling Junji that he was going to heaven. After a while, the grandfather's voice fell silent, prompting Junji to open the door and discover that his grandfather had passed away, his body covered in strange holes, similar to those on Rina now. This leads Junji to suspect that the world Rina is experiencing might be the same illness his grandfather once had. Soon after, Rina's parents pull her back into the house. That day, Junji went to meet his close friend Hideo in the shopping district to share this story with him, insisting that he must not tell anyone else. Despite this, Hideo felt skeptical that a disease causing holes in the human body could actually exist. When Junji asked about the illness his grandfather had, his family dismissed it as a dream and refused to provide any information. The next day, Hideo visited Junji at his house and told him that he had shared Rina's story with his mother. Junji complained that he shouldn't have told her about Rina, but Hideo insisted that he needed to tell Junji first. Hideo mentioned that his mother knew Rina because she had been a nurse who entered that house when Rina was just born. His mother recounted that when Rina was born, she wasn't breathing. It wasn't that she had died, she was still alive, but after a few days, her body was covered in holes. His mother said that the earth and water breathed through those holes. But Hideo viewed it differently. Perhaps his mother might have mentioned something, and after a while, Hideo noticed the bookshelf, filled with Yuji's grandfather's old books. He asked to take a look, hoping to find clues about how his grandfather died. As the room Junji was in had once been his grandfather's, Hideo then found a diary belonging to Yuji's grandfather, which contained information about some unfamiliar items. The grandfather had written in the diary that, on that day, he received a strange object, a green emerald. On September 13th, he stared at it all day. On September 23rd, he suddenly felt cold all over, an intense chill. After that, holes began to appear on his body, spreading everywhere. On September 25th in the afternoon, a doctor, who was not called by anyone, suddenly came in to inject medicine into the grandfather, and the family allowed it, feeling there was no other way to treat him. On September 27th, the grandfather's condition worsened as the holes spread all over his body, and he could feel the air seeping through those holes. Then, on September 29th, a swarm of insects appeared from nowhere through the window, resembling the shapes carved into the green emerald. I felt them entering through the holes in my back and sensed that they were breaking apart inside. On October 2nd, my grandfather began to weaken, and the number of insects kept increasing endlessly, leading him to believe it was a curse, surely a curse from the green emerald. Once he realized this, he mustered his last strength to throw it out the window. Junji believed it must have landed in the bushes in front of Rina's house, which resulted in her being cursed as well. At that moment, both of them noticed Rina, standing by the window, smiling at them and pointing towards the bushes. After a while, the mysterious doctor from before appeared again. and upon seeing him, Rina seemed to go into a frenzy, as if she were losing her mind. That night, Yuji, still suspicious of the mysterious doctor, decided to look at his grandfather's diary again. When he thought of the doctor's face, he believed it must be the same doctor who came to inject medicine into his grandfather. If that mysterious doctor appeared with the green emerald, it was possible he might be searching for it. Yuji then had the idea to try to find the green emerald to bring to the mysterious doctor, as it might help Rina recover. The scene then showed that during the late night, someone was searching for the green emerald in Rina's front yard, and eventually he found it. However, the next day, the weather changed due to Typhoon Kawa, and while Yuji was sitting in his room doing homework, suddenly the lights in the house went out, and he heard something banging against the window. When he opened the door, he was shocked to see someone weak at the entrance, with holes all over his body, making it hard to recognize who it was. Yuji asked who he was, and he replied that he was Hideo. Hideo's voice sounded strange, due to the holes on his body. He said he was very cold before using the green emerald in his hand to smash the window, showing Yuji that this was the green emerald he had found after reading his grandfather's diary, which had fallen into Rina's yard. Initially, he didn't believe the curse was real, but now he understood as he found himself in the same condition as her and his grandfather. He also mentioned that the green emerald was very valuable because he felt fascinated by it. But the curse was indeed real. Just then, the mysterious doctor appeared, and Yuji thought that this doctor must be the angel of death. In the province he mentioned, the mysterious doctor truly appeared, causing Yuji to feel shocked and terrified, prompting him to run away. The doctor then walked past Yuji with a calm demeanor amidst the raging storm. The next day, Yuji heard news that Hideo's body was found by the river, and the green emerald had disappeared without a trace, leaving no one knowing what happened that night. However, there was something surprising, because shortly after the events of Hideo's death and the disappearance of the green emerald, Rina's illness also disappeared. She returned to normal, with no traces left on her body that indicated the holes he had seen before. The Mansion of Luck. This is the story of a man named Haruhiko, who was born into a poor family of traveling puppeteers, with his father as the troop leader and his siblings being part of the troupe. Since he can remember, his siblings, consisting of Natsumi, his younger sister, and Yukihiko, his older brother, have traveled to various cities. Now, Haruhiko has arrived in an unfamiliar city where he must perform. After a while, he gets the opportunity to attend a school in that city, where the homeroom teacher introduces him to his classmates, mentioning that his family are puppeteers. Although Haruhiko hasn't been there long, the teacher wants everyone to get to know him. After school, while Haruhiko is walking home, Kinono, a female student in his class, approaches him to introduce herself because she is interested in the puppetry that his family does. She asks him to take her to see the puppets at his home. When they arrive, Kinono is amazed by the many puppets hanging in the house, and her gaze catches on one puppet that Haruhiko mentions is named Jean-Pierre, a wizard doll that his brother loves very much. Kinono then looks at other puppets with interest, but while she is focused on the puppets, Haruhiko brings out a puppet named Chopper, startling her, causing her to accidentally swat it away forcefully, making it hit the ground. He then apologizes to her, as he didn't think she would be that scared. Not long after, Haruhiko had to move to perform in another city. No matter how close they were, they had to leave. On the day Haruhiko and Kinono had to part, she came to see him off and shouted that one day they would meet again. However, during the journey, his brother kept complaining about how gloomy life seemed, always moving from one city to another for performances, and he didn't even want to talk about friends. His brother's complaints stemmed from a desire to settle down somewhere for good. He also mentioned that if their father fell ill, it might end this situation. What his brother said came true, as not long after, their father fell ill. During this time, their father taught the art of puppetry to his children, explaining that puppetry is about expressing one's emotions through the dolls, both in movement and emotion. The dolls are merely tools, and whether they live or die depends on the puppeteer. That night, his brother told Haruhiko that while people are puppeteers, he felt they were the ones being manipulated, as their father continued to perform puppetry shows, even without money, stubbornly carrying on. Because of this, the dolls seemed to be puppeteering their father. His brother then declared that he would not allow it to control him. Then, the next morning, his brother ran away from home, and 6 months later, their father passed away, leaving Haruhiko to support his younger sister alone. That afternoon, the two went shopping in the city, and his sister told him that once she graduated, she would come to help him work. After all that had happened, Haruhiko transitioned to working in a factory to support his sister. While the siblings were chatting casually, a woman approached Haruhiko, apologizing in case she had mistaken him. She mentioned that if she remembered correctly, she knew Haruhiko from before, introducing herself as Kinuno, who had been in the 5th grade with him. Upon hearing this, Haruhiko immediately recognized her and was very happy to see her again. Kinuno had come to work there, just as she had said. The two began to develop their relationship, and one day, when they visited Haruhiko's house, they found a letter in the mailbox. When Haruhiko saw the sender's name, he was shocked to discover it was from his brother who had run away from home. After that, he and his sister followed the address his brother had provided, both surprised to find that they had coincidentally encountered him in the same city. Upon arriving, they were astonished by the size of the house, and when they opened the door, they were greeted by the Jean-Pierre puppet standing there. Haruhiko thought his brother must be performing with it, so he shouted out, but after a moment, his brother, along with his wife and son, appeared, all in a state of being puppeteered. This surprised Haruhiko and his sister. During that meal, his brother shared the story of what had happened since he ran away from home, explaining that he left with only a little money and the Jean-Pierre puppet. He had been trying to support himself, with Jean-Pierre bringing him good luck, which led him to start a small business of his own. When the three siblings reunited, they all enjoyed a hearty meal together, during which the brother instructed the servants. As the music played, the curtain opened to reveal 3 life-sized Malay dancer puppets entertaining them, and even the sleeping son was manipulated to dance along. After that, Haruhiko and his sister began visiting their brother's house more often, and the brother's son and sister grew close. The brother mentioned that the ballet girls seemed particularly interested in him, and that day, the sister wanted to try ballet dancing, so she asked her brother to help her become like them. However, Haruhiko disagreed, feeling that what his brother was doing seemed strange in an indescribable way. Despite this, he couldn't stop his sister, and the brother's wife took her to set up the manipulation strings. During this time, Haruhiko asked his brother if he really hung himself from the ceiling, to which the brother replied that their family hung themselves with piano wires. The person helping them was someone his brother had hired specifically, and he needed 4 to 5 puppeteers just for himself. This house was built for this purpose. Hearing this, Haruhiko became even more curious about why his brother was doing this when he could move on his own. Why create such a burden? The brother explained that he had no burden other than moving his fingers, and he didn't need to move anything else. He could move however he wanted, just like a puppeteer manipulating a puppet. But this time it was different, because the puppet was the one being manipulated. Finally, the sister finished setting up the manipulation strings, but the brother thought she was still a bit stiff, so he told her to relax. The strings began to manipulate her, and she danced ballet beautifully, which made her enjoy it and start to like being manipulated. However, Haruhiko, seeing his sister being manipulated, immediately told her to take off the strings, saying he didn't want to act like his brother. The sister refused to remove the strings and told Haruhiko to go home first, because she was enjoying the ballet dance. Hearing this, the brother invited them to stay at his house, but Haruhiko didn't want to stay in such a strange place, so he went home alone. During this time, he hadn't visited Kinono much, so she came to his house and noticed that his sister was not there. Haruhiko, not wanting to introduce his brother to her, didn't mention anything about his brother's house. As time went on, his sister began to adapt and bond with the brother's family, refusing to return home. One day, while Haruhiko was watching his sister at the brother's house as usual, the ballet puppet suggested that he try the manipulation strings too, but Haruhiko insisted he wouldn't become like his brother, as he didn't want to be associated with them. He poked the nose of a volleyball puppet, and at that moment, Kinono, who had been following Haruhiko, saw this. She was playing with another girl, leading her to misunderstand and think he was cheating on her. Feeling angry, she ran to the front of the house, and when the front door opened, she encountered the Jean-Pierre puppet. Upon reflection, she remembered that she had once swatted it away in her childhood. When Jean-Pierre saw her, the puppets inside the house began to act strangely, becoming frantic and starting to attack people, including the brother and others, while the sister was also being manipulated aimlessly. It seemed that this was the work of Jean-Pierre, who was angry to see Kinono, the girl who had once forcefully swatted it away. The emotional impact of this encounter affected everyone, who were now floating in various directions. Haruhiko told his brother to command the puppeteer to stop, but his brother was also unable to move, explaining that this was happening because Jean-Pierre was angry and its spirit was indeed furious. Seeing that things were not looking good, Haruhiko tried to intervene and stop the puppeteer, but he was blocked before he could do so. He encountered Jean-Pierre and quickly ran after it to stop what was happening, but it led him to find his father and Kinono, both covered in blood, being manipulated back and forth. Suddenly, Jean-Pierre attempted to jump at him with a knife, but he managed to grab it and throw it against the wall, causing its body to shatter into pieces. Everything seemed to calm down, and Kinono's lifeless body stopped moving like the other ballet puppets. The hired staff had also collapsed. Haruhiko rushed to help his sister, and noticed that his brother and his family had all turned into puppets. This might be because they had been manipulated for so long that they had truly become puppets, or perhaps they had been puppets from the very beginning. He couldn't understand it either.